Sophie Longden with you this morning. And the last time we spoke to Member for Bega and Minister for Transport and Roads in New South Wales, Andrew Constance, was off the back of news that he was withdrawing from the race as far as the Eden Monero federal by-election goes. But I'm delighted to say that Andrew Constance joins us on the program this morning to work through a number of important local issues for us today. Andrew Constance, hello.
G'day, Sophie.
Now, a lot of people asking the question, Member for Bega, have you been in the region recently? Have you been talking to our local community? You've been pretty busy.
Yeah, look, it's been a busy time, and I think this year, for me personally, has been very, very hard. And like our community, everyone's experiencing, the impact of drought, fire, and the odd occasional flood, but of course COVID. And it's hard to explain. I mean, the very nature of the virus, you don't want to see it spread in our region. And, with the advent of regional tourism coming back, we've just got to make sure everybody's ready for an influx of people who have gone stir crazy in the cities wanting to get out and about. We've got to make sure we maintain our physical distancing and look out for each other.
And it's such an important issue around this COVID-19. Of course, it's a health-related issue, and to keep us safe, we need health workers. Off the back of news this week that we might see some cuts to staffing in the region. Now, is this a leaked email?
Sophie,
what is this?
Sophie. I think it's really important. Let's just, first of all, the board hasn't seen a consultant's report. It's a consultant's report that the Bega paper had.
Okay, so it's a leaked email that...
Well, we love leaked emails out of bureaucracy, don't we? But look, let's just put it into context. Obviously, I got a brief from the health district over because naturally I'm concerned because we put more money into last year's budget into the health district, so their budget's now 434 mil. And the other thing is that over the last 5 years, we've grown the staff by 467 full-time equivalent staff. So we're not in the business of cutting staff. So,
okay, so you're saying there will not be any staff cuts?
Well, what I'm saying is that the health district has gone to the unions and gone to, obviously, its own workforce to find better ways to do things, which is pretty prudent. I think that's what we'd expect of our bureaucracy. And ultimately, what they're saying is they want to convert contracted and agency staff into permanent staff. Now, that's my understanding of it. But I will speak to Margaret Bennett as the CEO. I'm certainly going to meet with the health services union to understand their concerns. And until there is that key decision point that has to be made, I don't think we should overreact to this. I think it's important that we understand the full context of it. And that's what I'll do as the local member. I don't want to see staff cut. That just sounds crazy, particularly at the moment.
Particularly with our reliance right now, and also the world basically applauding our health workers for the work that they've been doing during such a difficult period.
It's been amazing. And so too is the health district. I mean, they've had to deal with, a bunch of hospitals which are not ready for a pandemic to try and shape it up so that if we saw what was going on in the Northern Hemisphere, in the UK and the US, we're as ready as we could be, logistically, with ventilators, with the ability to manage staff, overseeing sick people. And we're not out of the woods. I think this is the thing that scares me most about all of this at the moment. I'm seeing this as the Transport and Roads Minister. The degree of complacency, it's scary. Now, this thing could take off again, and we can't afford that. So,
I think 100% that's what we're all feeling. So therefore, the question is, why are we then potentially freezing the wages of these essential healthcare workers at a state level, with that sort of contribution to the budget? Basically the Premier announcing that wage freeze is possibly going to impact workers for at least 12 months.
Well, I think the first thing is that if there's a blowout somewhere in the health district, well, we need to understand what's the cause of it and why it's gone on. That's sort of been lost here. So I think at the moment, let the board have a look at it. And if there's a consultant who's drafted some response and emails across bureaucrats, fine. But I'm not aware of those things. I'm going to go and talk to the health district CEO and I'm going to meet with the union. I think that's the sensible thing. And then obviously rely on the board and come back to the community so the community knows the full extent of what's happened and why these decisions might have to be made.
And I think that's probably one of the conversations you've been hearing a lot of out there in the community, not only within the health sector, but also within, bushfire impacted communities. A lot of people saying, budget blowouts are often to do with higher level management. They're often to do with misspent consultancy fees, what have you, that it shouldn't be those on the ground essential workers that are impacted by any kind of budget cuts. cuts.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, our frontline staff across the board, I mean, the community loves them. They love what they've done for us and recognise that. And you know, we're in a situation now where the state's budget has just collapsed. And that's the sad part. I mean, the state's finances are propped up by typically stamp duty receipts on property exchanges, on payroll tax. Now, the property and labour markets under COVID, it's absolutely smashed and collapsed the revenues into government, which is, you know, it does mean you've got to look for any examples of waste that might be happening. You've got to find better ways to do things, and everyone's got to play their part in that. We've got to bring everyone together and work closer together, not end up, you know, with disunity, particularly when we've still got the health crisis happening and, of course, the economic crisis.
My guest this morning on ABC Southeast is Member for Bega and Minister for Transport and Roads for New South Wales, Andrew Constance. And before we move from the healthcare sector, we did have a question on notice from the Eurobodalla Hospital Development Committees and the community there, asking the question, you know, that the Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, said back in 2018, let's get cracking. 2 years later, nothing happening. That community wants to know what's the delay.
Wait. Just hang on. Like the thing is, there's been extensive clinical service planning, which some of the local doctors, like Dr. Holland, have been involved in. It is going to be a facility that caters for level 4 services. The site, which has been looked at extensively at the moment, is the site next to Maria TAFE. I mean, these things are all happening.
Okay, so the level 4 status is locked in?
Yeah. So, no, hang on. So the clinical service planning has been done, provides level 4 capacity in the facility. That's what I want. I want to see mental health. I want to see an upgraded, you know, fully functional emergency department. I want to see the new hospital, okay? But you just don't pluck it out of thin air. There's 29 hospitals being built across the state. They're specialist builders who build hospitals. They're not just sort of, you know, odd small jobs. These are big pieces of capital work. So, you know, that's happening. And then, you know, ultimately, this has got to get on with. And, you know, the budget's been allocated. I made it clear, and it's been made clear before, that we're going to see, if we have to, more funds applied. But I think the main thing is at the moment, like, we're just getting on with it. And you know, without all the fanfare and everything else, I mean, the main thing is, this is the point, capital is capital and recurrent is recurrent, and we're going to get on with it.
All right. Well, that's reassuring to know that it is still the plan. Have you got any particular dates in mind, given that we are, you know, now talking about trying to put these big infrastructure projects back onto the planning board to encourage employment, to drive local economies?
Well, that's important. I mean, in our region, you know, there's a state government, we're up over $800 million in capital. That's why we've had really good employment numbers, because this state government took some tough decisions. I remember being treasurer and getting belted from pillar to post over leasing of poles and wires. Well, that ignited an infrastructure boom in places like the regions. So, you know, we've still got to stay focused on infrastructure jobs, particularly with what we're seeing with the economy slowing down with COVID and everything else, are key. So, you know, this morning I'm announcing more jobs for showground developments at Bega, Benbroke, Cobargo, Pambilla. They're all getting jobs at those showground sites as we upgrade facilities, and they'll be good local jobs.
Okay, because Noel from
dollars going into the Snowy Mountains Highway announced this morning, again designed to create jobs and keep cash flowing around our local community, so it's spent in small business. That's the aim of the game at the moment.
All right, so Snowy Mountain's getting $1 million for road upgrades. That's pretty exciting news.
Yeah, so safety improvements up and down the Snowy Mountains Highway. I mean, I'm very excited about showgrounds because, you know, this is stimulus money that, you know, this is stuff that's shovel ready and we have to get out the door straight away.
So this is the Bega recreational showgrounds, Andrew, just to confirm?
Yeah, so Bega is getting new floodlights on the arena, which is good. Then Baker's getting power upgrades. Cobargo's getting access improvements, and Pamela's getting improvements with the wood shop, the horse stables, car park, and what have you as well there. So it's all good.
Okay, so some money being thrown around, which is great news, and it is exciting, obviously, off the back of news that the snowfields will be opening on the 22nd of June. So great to hear that $1 million will be improving the roads there, and that will obviously, more detail of that will be coming out very soon.
Yeah, so people just on that sort of safety, they're going to need to allow additional travel time if they're going to be using the Snowy Mountains Highway throughout June. So just...
Oh, okay, so the works will start with the ski
these
season.
are designed to get on with it, yeah. It's just, I mean, you can travel the Kings Highway at the moment. You'll see a lot of roadworks. I mean, this is us getting on with just putting those dollars in and keeping people working.
Okay, well, talking of putting the dollars in, Andrew Constance, earlier we spoke to Robert Bain from POM, who's talking about that attenuator and the cost of that. And he's had a number of different outside contractors suggesting they can do it for a lot less. Let's just hear a 20-second grab from Rob about that.
I suppose the going for an inquiry is the last thing we really want to do, because it's just going to waste more time. But, if it looked like the project was going to fall over, then it definitely needs to be some sort of independent inquiry. But really what we'd ask him to do is to go out for competitive tenders. This project has never been out for a competitive tender yet.
So the Eden community keen to progress that attenuator project sooner rather than later, Andrew Constance. Any news for that community?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, the money was put into the budget. We have had some concerns about the cost estimates, and we've been to market. We actually tried at one point to negotiate with the contractor who built the commercial wharf extension to see if we could augment that contract. And the numbers are coming in much bigger than the claims that are being made by Mr. Bain. Now, we have not...
Well, he's suggesting at least one contractor can do it for under $12 million.
Sophie, can I just finish, please? We also... this is a safe harbour project. It was never going to have marina berths as Mr. Bain wants, but I came up with another proposal that was put to him. So there was two options, one which would include public berths and floating attenuator, and of course the ability to make sure that we had some marina berths, because we also want to convert the harbour there. There's an old building that's got to be knocked down, and we want to see it revitalised like Bermuda's harbour. But he has made it clear it's to be his way in terms of going out with a fixed attenuator. So I'm happy to do that. We'll go to market, but I can assure you this. There's a $19 million budget. It won't be going $1 over it. And the point out of it is, particularly now, because budgets are being killed by what's happening. So we're going to press go in terms of going to market on the project. But I can assure you, we had another option, which was about putting some berths in, and that was refused by Rob. So,
So in terms of creating that safe harbour, which Jenny of Eden has just, called in to say that was really always the priority for the community, are you open to, really working with the community to ensure that there is an outcome that really achieves that goal?
Well, no, we've worked with the community. Rob Bain has made the community view very clear. It's to be a fixed attenuator in his alignment, his way, and that's what we're going to go to market for. So if we don't end up, ultimately what I was after was the floating attenuator being considered with public berths, but Parliament made it clear they don't want that to go to the community, so it's not. So we'll go to market. The other thing is that Mr. Bain said that the private sector is going to build the marina behind the publicly funded attenuator. I'm not convinced that's right, but again, we'll go to market with the attenuator and see what happens. But Jenny's point's right. This was supposed to be a safe harbour which you could put boats behind so that the swell doesn't come in. Now, there's been attempts previously. We weren't going to go and spend the monies that the market was saying, because we just can't afford it. But we'll go to market with the $19 million that I've secured, and I'd remind Rob that the project has been funded because of the work I've done, and we'll test it. And if the market comes back and doesn't want to build it for that price, well, then we'll revisit the second option, which is what I wanted to see, which is, like Bermuda, some publicly funded berths in and around Snow Cove.
Andrew Constance, will finish as we began, talking about our community obviously still reeling, still trying to recover from such a devastating series of bushfires at late 2019 and into 2020. Many people still rebuilding, and many people still calling for help, saying that they still feel that they're not necessarily being assisted the way they need to be. What are you doing at the moment? What sort of conversations are you having, and what are you working towards for our region?
Well, as I always have, Sophie, I'm one person with three staff. I don't have a council bureaucracy or state bureaucracy behind me just doing everything, but we have worked overtime to try and find people who are falling through the cracks. And unfortunately, there's people who are out there probably listening to this right now who have opted to go back onto their blocks with caravans and, the pods and what have you. Or, we've got people who aren't connected to septic, they're not connected to water. So Kevin Anderson, who's the Minister for Fair Trading and Better Regulation, and I are going to be bringing the charities in because I find it unacceptable that Red Cross is still sitting there with $130 million of Australians' money that's been donated for these purposes to try and help these individuals.
Well, they're claiming that, rushing through that process was causing the wrong people to get money and that there was all sorts of issues around the Red Cross. They've been saying in the last few weeks they were concerned that some people were applying for funds that probably didn't need those funds.
Well, how do they know? They're not on the ground. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, it is an issue there for those who need that help. We've still got odd people who still haven't, obviously been able to go through the government system because of, their personal circumstances. I'm stressed out of my brain about the state of mental health and wellbeing across the community because COVID has completely shut down the ability for people to be reached. We've seen some good things happen though as well on the flip side. I mean, everyone was saying that, Mang O'Rourke wouldn't be able to complete the job by June. Well, I think we've seen an incredible amount of effort go in there, and it's been unbelievable in terms of the clean-up operations, and it's still continuing today, and they're good local subcontractors are out doing the job every day. John Barilaro put some money forward for industry assistance for forestry, dairy and horticulture.
Now, what about the beef farmers who have missed out so far?
There you go. So the federal government the other week announced very significant dollars. So maybe they could also help out here with industry dollars as well. It's not a case of either or.
All right.
We put $75,000 out there straight away to help farmers, and also with fencing assistance and all these things. But, particularly, there is that opportunity. I'm also going to say this, what about? Well, there's organisations like Meat and Livestock, New South Wales Farmers, who haven't advocated particularly aggressively for their members. And I'm the first one. Now I'm having to go back and chase, and so we'll do that. But I think given the monies that were announced by the Commonwealth the other day, I think if they could set aside some industry supports as well for the beef farmers and the sheep farmers, given that we've covered off horticulture, apiarists and oysters and forestry and dairy, that would be helpful.
Well, I'm just going to do one more what about, Andrew Constance, because someone has texted in saying, what about the Bega Valley Regional Gallery and that arts funding?
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a big and complex issue, but what about the gallery?
Well, what about the fact that we put $7 million into Twyford Hall? What about the fact that we also put $3 million into the old Bega Hospital? Right, there's $10 million. And I see stories on the news the other night comparing the Regional Art Gallery to the Performing Arts in the Eurobodalla, different shires. So $10 million goes into the Bega Valley. That was never acknowledged. Going into Twyford Hall and the old Bega Hospital. And what we're saying here is there's still an opportunity for the council to come forward. But council, just remember, when council raised the Regional Art Gallery, 1 minute they were building it down Maroomill, the next minute they were building it in Bega. They hadn't consulted with the community on it. And yet Twyford Hall Committee had campaigned for years and years and years to get their facility up. So, we're trying to do everything for everybody. And I back the Regional Art Gallery, of course. But at the same time, let's put it into context in the other monies that are being spent. There's plenty of funding deeds with Bega Valley Shire Council, from water filtration to roads to sporting complexes, which have got to be delivered quickly. And we've also got the community doing great things. And that's why I think at the moment, with the Regional Art Gallery, help us out. I mean, no one can deny the amount of money that's come into the area through my representation. I just want everybody to continue to work together. And it's not about pitting projects against each other. It's about coming together. And we've been through this with the fires. We've got to stick together with COVID, regardless of political backgrounds and viewpoints on particular things. And let's save livelihoods and jobs.
Well, Andrew Constance, we've certainly managed to thrash through a number of very important local issues which people were really hungering to hear more about. Certainly a lot of text coming in this morning reiterating the need to support, protect and keep those healthcare jobs. A lot of people very passionately asking you to do that, and I know you've already said you will.
So if you can I just be crystal clear, right? the thing that hasn't come out particularly strongly over the last couple of days is the point that the Premier has made clear that no one is going to lose a job in the public sector over the next 12 months. And that comes at a time when in the community and private sector, we've seen 200,000 jobs go in a month. So I know that there is a lot of angst about that pay rise, but the other benefit, which has been made clear, is that the government doesn't have to sack anybody. Now, that's coming at a time where private sector is slashing jobs, cutting wages, and we had 200,000 people go in a month, and the state's finances have collapsed. Now, look, the upper house is going to consider this, and there's going to be all these things go on, and it's important that we all work together, okay? And everyone's got to have the full context of what's going on, not information not being disseminated fully. It's like the health service thing that we started on with the hospital and jobs going there. I'm not going to let a job go at the hospital because I'm going to fight for them. And I just think that the key element in all of this is just having that understanding and knowing that this is not easy. It's not easy. So,
well, we do appreciate your honesty and also your time this morning, Andrew Constance. And let's finish on a positive note as well. One texter texting in just now saying, I talked on the phone to Andrew Constance beforehand, and I'd just like to thank him publicly for the support that he is giving fire victims in our region. And I think that's resonating a lot with people from this morning on the text line as well.
Good on you. Thanks, Sophie.
Andrew Constance, good to chat. Member for Bega there, and of course Minister for Roads and Transport, and talking there around a whole number of issues. We certainly gave him some time, but at the same time there were a number of issues that we needed to cover. Hopefully we've ticked a lot of boxes from all of the questions that came through this morning.